Late last week, Arizona became the first state in the nation to fully ban outside money of billionaires and others from influencing the management and administration of elections. On Friday, Arizona Governor Doug Ducey signed into law House Bill 2569, one in a series of strong measures Arizona lawmakers have taken to protect election integrity and keep the influence of private money out of Arizona's election system operation. Now, Arizona, as you'll recall, was one of the closest races in the 2020 presidential election, with Joe Biden getting 1.67 million votes, or 49.4%, to win the state's 11 electoral votes, while Trump got 1.66 million votes, or 49.1%. Arizona also happened to be the recipient of about $5 million from a left-leaning technology group that funneled $350 million, handled $350 million from Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg and his wife into select election offices across the country. And the outcome of looking at this suggests it had a partisan outcome. Joining me now is Trevor Carlsen, Senior Research Fellow at the Foundation for Government Accountability. He spearheaded an investigation on how Zuckerbucks infiltrated and influenced the 2020 Arizona elections. Trevor, welcome to Washington Watch.
Thank you, Tony. Good to be with you.
Okay, so what did I miss in that setup?
I think you covered it pretty well. It's important to note we gave them the moniker Zuckerbucks because the Center for Tech and Civic Life has been around for a while now, but they previously operated in about a $1.4 million operating budget in 2018, which is the most recent data I was able to come across. And then for the year 2020, they received grants from Zuckerberg, but others as well. According to reporting, that was $350 million, which, as you noted, was then distributed to different election jurisdictions across the country, intended to be used for the conduct of the 2020 elections.
Now, I think in total there was 2,500 different grants given, but let's talk about Arizona because that's where you dug down into it. Where and how was this $5 million used in Arizona?
Right. So to be clear, I just want to make sure that your audience is aware. The data we have so far is preliminary, and there's still a lot more research that needs to be done. But a few of the things that we found that were interesting was, Joe Biden won a couple of the counties. The only county he flipped was Maricopa County. And of the counties that Joe Biden was able to win in Arizona, four of the five received grants from CTCL. And in those four counties, Democratic turnout was significantly larger than it was in 2016. And by contrast, in the one county where there were no donations from the Center for Tech and Civic Life, the turnout was more. There was more parity in turnout between the Democratic ticket and the Republican ticket, which just has a suggestion that there was at least an impact on Democratic turnout as a result of these grants.
Trevor, do we know how that money was used in those counties?
That's a great question, and that's one of the reasons why we're exploring this. Transparency is a big issue here, and CTCL has said that they will make these the reports that they require different counties to submit they were required to submit these reports by January 31st. A number of jurisdictions that I'm aware of have received extensions of, I believe, 6 months. So some reports have not yet been submitted. And one of the concerns there is the reporting is overly broad, and CTCL made the point in the reporting format, the template, that was to give those who were submitting the reports flexibility so that they could use their best judgment. But one of the concerns there is it makes it very difficult for anyone on the outside to understand how the money was ultimately spent. In Arizona, we know that different counties received different amounts. It's difficult across the country to know which metric CTCL used in order to allocate grant amounts. It seems clear from looking at some states and the research that I've done that it's not population-based. And so it just raises questions as to what the metrics were.
Now, Trevor, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the rationale justification for this outside money coming into elections was the coronavirus and the need for, PPE and all of these other things. But it appears that it was used for voter education, voter turnout.
That's right. So I guess the reason for these grants was that, yes, there was COVID-19. Different jurisdictions were worried about having enough PPE and resources so that they could conduct a safe election, and therefore they needed additional funding. While some funds were used on PPE in certain jurisdictions, we couldn't find any evidence that PPE was used. And in some of the grant request applications that we've looked at, there was no line item for PPE specifically. That's not to say that it was used for other aspects that weren't necessarily related to COVID-19, but it raises some questions as to, if not used for some of the things that many people would view as sort of primary uses with respect to the pandemic, what other uses could there have been? And yes, there are some instances, to your point, where the funds were used to register more voters, which is a perfectly fine thing to do. But then there are questions as to, where were those efforts? Were they targeted in a particular jurisdiction?
And what access of information did they have to do that, to target those voters? It would appear, and we'll know more as you continue your investigation, but it appears COVID-19 could have been used to mask a bigger agenda. Trevor, thanks so much for joining us. We'll leave it there, but we'll revisit with you when you get more information.
Glad to be on with you.